And what I had really wanted to do for a long time was a lot of drugs. I had been high before, but I had never been don't squish tiny horses high. And I definitely wanted a piece of that action.
I'm your host, Ari Shafir, and tonight the topic is psychedelia. Please help me welcome this first comic. Absolutely hilarious. I've been watching him for years. Please give it up for Mr. Dan Cummins, everybody. Let him in. Dan Cummins.
It was 2011, and two grown men are lying face up. It's a Super Bowl weekend, Saturday night. Two grown men are lying face up, fully clothed, on twin beds at the MGM Grand Hotel. And they're focusing really hard on their breathing, and they're listening to Enya, because that's the only thing they've been able to figure out that keeps them from completely just freaking the fuck out. One of these guys is comedy booking agent, Stu, doesn't want his last name to be revealed for this story, but it sounds a lot like sounds exactly like that. Right now, Stu is really worried that the other guy in the room has a knife and wants to stab him with it. And the other guy in the room doesn't have a knife. He also doesn't care about telling Stu that he doesn't have a knife because he doesn't think Stu is a real person. He's currently convinced that Stu is a psychological construct that's been planted into his subconscious by some kind of evil scientist that's been studying him in a coma trying to get secrets. And he doesn't want to reveal those secrets. That man is me. And this is about the night my agent and I tried to recreate Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Yeah. I've thought a lot in the year since about why at 33 I decided to head to Vegas with a bag of drugs, including 9 hits of acid. Like, I'd never partied quite that hard before. Or since, and a lot of it was the movie, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Like, I saw that movie finally. I was really fascinated that Hunter S. Thompson and his lawyer just went to Vegas for work. Like, technically they're there for work, and they just blew off all responsibilities in life to burn through a literal briefcase full of drugs. And I found that strangely inspiring. Like, I've always been so worried about consequences. And I thought, how fun would that be? Just for like one night, at least. Just to do whatever I wanted to do, no matter how terrible of a choice it was. And what I had really wanted to do for a long time was a lot of drugs. I wanted to know how it felt to have that mind just like brutally altered to the level that their minds were. And so I think, and especially acid. I feel like acid was a big part of that movie for me too, because I've been fascinated with acid. It was on my bucket list ever since a buddy of mine in college told me this story that I'll never forget about how he dropped acid. He went to this party, and he got stuck in the bathroom for a couple of hours, where he was perched up on the toilet, and he was afraid to get down because he had noticed that a lot of tiny horses had sprung up from the tiles. And he thought they were beautiful, and he didn't want to risk hurting one of these, like, you know, really gorgeous creatures. And I had been high before, but I had never been don't squish tiny horses high. And I definitely wanted a piece of that action. And so it's 2 p.m. We get to the MGM, we check in, and we pop some codeine, smoke a little weed, have a few drinks, just to put our brains in a peaceful state, to ensure that we have a nice, soothing trip. And we each take a hit of acid, and then we go to the Circus, where Hunter S. Thompson hallucinated, to go play some poker. And we get there, and the acid still hadn't kicked in, and we got really nervous. We're like, oh man, I think we got a bad batch. And we decided to take a second hit of acid. Yeah, exactly. Not bad, not a bad batch. I sat down at the poker table, started having some very new thoughts. Like, I remember thinking that the guy sitting across from me had the most chips. Like, he was doing the best at poker, specifically because his face had too many angles. Like, I didn't know how many angles a face should have, and I'm like, this fucker has more than that. And I felt like it gave him a strategic poker advantage. And I also had a thought that Stu has no chance of winning at poker because he has a teeny tiny head. I'd never noticed how truly tiny it was until that moment. Like, not Beetlejuice, head shrinker, dust tiny. But pretty goddamn close. And I'm like, he can't win. You can't win with a tiny head at poker. That's just, I know that now. And I'm having a lot of fun thoughts. I'm laughing at these fun thoughts. Stu's laughing at his fun thoughts. And then we decided to take our great time and ruin it by making easily what was our worst decision of the night. We decided to go back to the hotel and take the rest of the acid. Taking the rest of the acid is just a bad premise. Right? Like, it implies you've already taken an amount of acid you thought would be enough when you didn't already have a head full of acid. And now you're taking more than that because you're quite literally insane. So we take 2.5 more hits each. There's a half in there. We were so greedy with our drugs, we couldn't let one guy have one more hit than the other guy. We actually tore a little tiny tab in half. And we had 2.5. And then we decided we need to reconfirm picking up some coke and ecstasy in a little bit. And before we go get the rest of the drugs, we need to go get some pizza across the street. We're really planning this out as best we can. And it should have taken us about 15 minutes to make it across the street to get some pizza. We estimated later it took us roughly an hour and a half. Because by the time we hit the lobby, the acid was kicking in so hard, our brains were just disintegrating. Stu's new reality became, once we got to the lobby, that there was a security team tracking us, trying to catch us doing the drugs, complete with dogs. He thinks dogs are following us. Like that's ever gonna happen in Vegas. Like, they're just gonna let, drug-sniffing dogs loose on the strip. They would bark at almost every fucking person they came across. But he thinks our best course of action is to hide in the MGM parking lot behind some cars so the dogs don't find us. And so we do that. We go out and we're hiding behind a car. It's not even dark out. We're two men in our 30s just hiding behind random cars. And then he would get nervous that the dogs were closing in, and then he would decide we gotta head down, scurry to the next car to not look suspicious. That looks so suspicious. And I'm following him knowing it's a bad idea, but I have to stay close to him because I have a new reality as well. My new reality is that everything that's not really, really close to me that I look at starts to drift back and away and up into the air, including Stu. And I actually am thinking that if I don't stay within grabbing distance of my friend, he could drift into space. And I can't handle that right now. I just cannot risk that. And so we're just scurrying and I'm chasing, and finally we make it to the pizza place where I decide to order us 2 pepperoni pizzas, which I don't even really like pepperoni pizza, but another real thought I'm having is that I'm convinced that some things that I've always thought were real are real, and some things that I've always thought were real are not real. I love Canadian bacon pizza, but you know what? It's fucking fake pizza, you guys. It's never real, it's never existed, and you can't eat things that don't exist. So pepperoni pizza, super duper real. It's the most real pizza. And by God, that's what we're gonna eat. And all this makes perfectly sense to me at the time. It makes really good sense. And they have this like the individual little boxes in the little trays on the shelf. And I go to just grab us 2 pizzas from the counter. And like millimeters before grabbing it, my fingers crumple in my wristbands and I hit something that really hurts. And I'm just like, what the fuck is that happened? And I just look at Stu and he's off worried about security. He's in a bad place. And I just keep trying to grab it, and it just keeps crumpling over and over. I'm like, I cannot for the life of me get this pizza. I went back the next day to see what the hell. There was a plexiglass barrier between product and customer that I'm unable to visually process. I remember at one point actually digging at the fucking force field like an insane badger, just desperate for pepperoni. And they take pity on me. They give us the pizzas. I wish they would have given us security camera footage of that interaction. That would be priceless. But we were able to somehow eat these pizzas. And then we hop in a taxi to go find the rest of the drugs. And I have a piece of paper I'd put down in my pocket earlier with the address written down because I knew I'd be in a bad place. And I read what I think are the words on the paper to the driver. I'm reading him what I think is an address. He hears what I'm guessing is just drug-fueled gibberish, and he wants more information. Essentially, he wants an actual address, and or references. What part of town is it? Nearest intersection. I can't answer any question. I'm only mentally capable of rereading what I think it says louder and more aggressively. I don't know what I was yelling. I'm sure it was some just gibberishy, addressy kind. Just 76th Street, Durango, 76. Place Street, 7777777. I'm freaking out. Like a lot of people, the driver doesn't like being screamed at by a maniac. He becomes very upset. And now he's screaming at me. And this freaks Stu out. Stu's really freaking out. Now, I find out later that at this point in the evening, Stu becomes convinced that this driver is part of the security team. And he's driving us straight to prison. Like, not processing, not police station, not jail, just prison. We're going to some kind of drug prison. And at the next intersection at the red light, he just leaves. He just opens the door mid-fare and just starts running away from the taxi, which I didn't know was an option you could do in taxis. I grab an unknown amount of cash and just throw it at the driver and chase him, and we just run for a long time. I don't know. We couldn't track time. I do know. I remember like being in alleys. I remember a lot of scurrying and hiding. Finally, we were able to actually see the MGM Tower in the distance. And we were we navigated like savages. We just like would see it visually, and we're moving somewhat towards it like two monsters following the moon. And we finally do make it back to the room where I decide we gotta lay down, we gotta focus on our breathing, we gotta calm the fuck down because shit's getting real weird. On the way back, Stu started talking a lot about a knife, and he was real worried about getting stabbed. He's asking me over and over about the knife. I don't even care about answering him because he's the Canadian Bacon of people to me right now. I don't like, you're not even a real thing. You're just so annoying right now. You're a fake annoying thing. And I just think that like if we could just lay down and focus on our breathing and maybe listen to some music or something, because it's getting so dark. You know, like every time I look around, I'm convinced there's a wall of blood behind me in the background. I need some kind of music, but unfortunately I listen to a lot of hard rock and metal and Rage Against the Machine, Queens of the Stone Age. Not what I fucking need right now. Not gonna put me in a better place. And luckily, I think back to an album I used to fall asleep to in high school, and I'm able to type 4 letters into the keyboard, which is really hard because my keyboard's melting. I can't look at it for more than a few seconds without it starting to melt, but I'm able to get in E-N-Y-A. Oh, sweet Enya. I have never loved her more than that evening. If you don't know who Enya is, you've heard her. She's that sweet, like new agey spa music, like wizard music. Like if elves were real, Enya would be #1 in the elf charts week in and week out. Right? Like to me, she's not even a real human. She was never born. She just, just sprang up from some mystic Irish pond, fully formed. Oh, oh. Like, please, Enya, turn these blood walls into waterfalls. I need you now more than ever. And we laid down and listened to her soothing rhythms, and it worked. We rode Enya through the peak. And things got a little bit worse for a while, but then they got a lot better. Stu stopped talking about the knife. I started thinking he was real. And we were able to stand up, and I looked out at the skyline, the strip, and it was the most beautiful skyline I've ever seen in my life. It was like pulsating and trailing and just truly beautiful. And I remember thinking, like, I knew that I shouldn't have done any of the things I had done so far that night. I knew that I definitely shouldn't, after all of that, still go find coke and ecstasy, but I was going to. I mean, it's bad choices. It's like I got responsibilities, I got a mortgage, I got 2 kids. Not with me that weekend. Let's not get too fucking judgy right now. They were safe away from me. But, I don't regret it, It's like I finally just did a night just truly for me. I got my own story. I didn't see tiny horses, but I now definitely know how it feels to have your mind terribly altered. And if this story that I've just told actually inspires you to go on your own drug binge, I gotta say, no, don't fucking do it. It was I was in the devil's brain for a good 6 hours. Like, it was terrifying. It was truly, I feel like I was one hit away from still wandering the strip today, just like 7677777. You kidding? Patient is not real? Okay. So close to being that guy forever, but if you're gonna do it, and I can't stop you, bring your own snacks. You don't want to deal with force fields. Bring a little bit of Enya and never take the rest of the acid. 2 is more than enough. Thank you guys. Be safe out there.